target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hello, welcome back-ish. So, thank you for tuning in. I'm TC, this MBRR Media, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Still working on the new opening theme song and rebranding the headers and the scrolls and the crawlers and all of that. So I do everything on the weekends now, and Monday through Friday is dedicated to work and sleep and workout. So yeah, and then I do everything else on the weekends. So if I look a little frazzled, it's because I got up at I slept in all the way to 5 o'clock this morning. AVA, thanks for being here, by the way. AVA's great fellow veteran and a moderator, so behave yourselves. But yeah, I got up I slept until 5 o'clock, and I've been cooking and cleaning and doing yard work since 5 this morning. And I looked down at my phone as I was listening to podcasts and just doing the weed eating around the yard, and I looked and it's 11 o'clock. I need to sweep the sidewalks and be ready to go for the show. So I'm scrambling around. Then a neighbor, and this is awesome. Neighbor walks up. He goes, "Do you own the place?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "I've been meaning to catch you sometime and tell you, I went to school across the street, and I knew the lady that lived in this house years and years and years ago. And this guy's in his 70s. And he's like, and that place was falling apart. And man, you guys have done such good work with this. It looks so nice." So that was a nice little filler for the day. Made me feel good that somebody noticed that I been working hard on the place. And so I didn't want to rush him off, because that would have hey, thanks for that nice compliment. I got crap to do. Gotta go, neighbor. Gotta go. But no, he eventually extricated himself from the conversation without me having to do much. But yeah, anyway, I want to real quick. I want to give a shout out to my permanent show producer, Ryan. He is the son of Betty Jane, who just a massively wonderful couple. In fact, Betty Jane introduced me to my guest today. But Ryan passed away a couple of years ago as a result of the jab, and Betty Jane was just gave a great gift to the show, to the channel, and because of that, I wanted to honor Ryan and the work that his gift to his family, and the gift from Betty Jane. Because of that, I wanted to honor Ryan and just ask everybody to keep Betty Jane and her family in mind as they continue to gift others, because of the generosity and the foresight of Ryan in his life. He'd gone too soon. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for standing by. Thank you to all of the channel members, to all the subscribers. Thank you so much to those that share the content, and for those that were patient in my 1-month vacation. I needed some time off. When you do this as long as I've been doing it, and as often as I do it, you just need to take some time off. So without any further ado, we're going to get to the root of the show today. I tell people that law enforcement is a gift that keeps on giving when you want to talk about government accountability. And we live in a world where you either love law enforcement or you absolutely hate law enforcement. And if you hate law enforcement, you can never say anything positive about it. And if you love law enforcement, you can never say anything critical of it. And law enforcement represents support, or lack of support for law enforcement really represents the divide between the left and the right, Republicans and the Democrats. And it's part of the game that the system uses to game us and play us against one another. And they make it very clear that if you don't support law enforcement, if you're a Republican, if you're considered a conservative, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm far more conservative as a paleo-libertarian than 98% of the Republicans you're going to meet. which is why I'm so critical of the Republican Party. I'm critical of the Trump administration. I'm critical of people who blindly support Republicans. And I'm also equally critical of the left and of the Democrats, because they're not classical liberals. They are not classically philosophically geared towards loving liberty. Both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, love tyranny. And they love to excuse people who do bad things that are on their side. They 100% want to excuse those who do bad things and then are on their side. And when the Republicans aren't in power, they'll point to the Democrats and go, look at the terrible things that government's doing. And then when the Republicans do get in power, they point at their Democrats and go, look, we're not as terrible as you are, while they begin to do all the terrible things that the Democrats were doing. Screwing up the economy, launching wars, using law enforcement as a weapon against their enemies, creating the surveillance state and letting it go crazy. You know, Wisconsin, and that's what we're going to be talking about, is one county in Wisconsin. But Wisconsin has been in the news a lot lately just for all of the stories coming in about Wisconsin law enforcement agencies abusing flock cams. And Minnesota's got stories now of law enforcement agencies abusing flock cams. And don't get me started on the Minnesota State Patrol and their lack of accountability for how their troopers drive and murder young girls and paralyze young men and get involved in accidents because they're driving way too fast. No lights, no sirens, no emergency. They just get to do whatever they want to do. And in this story today, we have a county in Wisconsin where a captain covered up criminal sexual conduct of one of the deputies, covered it up, worked to hide it, intimidated witnesses and intimidated complainants, and not just from the public out in the private world, but knew about accusations within the agency by fellow law enforcement officers, deputies, about this individual, and she covered that up too. Oh, and by the way, the person that she covered up these crimes for would be considered a leftist because of the lifestyle that he lives. And she's running as a Republican. So you want to tell me that law enforcement's on your side, and you want to tell me that law enforcement's by and large conservative, and look, we've got a Republican candidate for sheriff in Racine County, Wisconsin, covering up for somebody who's a deviant. And not because he's gay, but because he's a deviant because of the things that he did. She's covering up for a deviant. And now she wants to be the sheriff, after she tried to hide her discipline record. So, without any further ado, and be nice to Adrianne. I should say Adrianne. I don't want to sound like Rocky. Adrianne! But so be nice. She wasn't ready for this. She's like, do I have to be on? Is this live? No, it's Memorex. No, here we go. Hello, thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody calls me TC on here, just so you know.
Okay.
If you say my full name, they're gonna go, who the hell is she talking to?
Okay.
So, big shout out to Betty Jane, who introduced us, basically.
Yes.
So,
thank you to Betty Jane.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who you are, because you were nodding to a lot of my pointing out the disparities between the left and the right, in the sense of that it's just a game. It's gamesmanship. They just want to pit the Republicans against the Democrats, the left wingers versus the right wingers, and really all it is it's this divide. So you're kind of nodding at that, but you consider yourself a a conservative. And
Absolutely.
On your Substack, you actually write about, you write critical stuff about Republicans in general and how not conservative they really end up being.
Yes. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about you and about that before we and how you got interested and involved in this story of corruption there in Racine County.
Okay. Yeah, sweet. Thank you for letting me share. So, just really quick, in my background, I'm a childhood sexual assault survivor myself. Really like got into advocating for victims in 2016 when I worked with the then mayor of Burlington, Wisconsin, to get Denim Day recognized. It's a international day, um, kind of just advocating for the fact that, it doesn't really matter what victims wear, um, or survivors wear, they can still, be subject to the type of issues that we're going to be talking about today. And then in 2020, I got very involved with advocating with my local assembly rep during the COVID lockdowns and masking, and how masking could create a trauma response in survivors of sexual assault. And in Wisconsin, we have approximately 1.2 million survivors. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 boys will experience sexual violence by the time they turn 18. So this is a big issue. And so, that kind of leads us up to now. I found out late last year that this candidate was going to be running for sheriff, and I started hearing some rumors and gossip about things that she had been involved in or things that she had done. And I prefer to function on facts and not just on gossip or rumors. And so on December 1st of 2025, I submitted an open records request for her disciplinary file
Wow.
with the sheriff's department.
So when she announced that she was going to be running,
Yep.
you didn't know really anything about her involvement in this. It was only after she announced that she wanted to run for sheriff that people started to talk about it.
Yeah, I didn't know her from Adam and Eve. I mean, I didn't know her at all. I didn't know her name. I'd never heard of her. But the rumors and the gossip that was going around were very concerning to me. And so again, I didn't want to verbalize any criticism unless I had some facts to go on.
Which is, I don't think people who don't do like what you do with your writing and your exposés when you do them, or when like with my writing over on Substack, or especially when I'm writing about geopolitics or national politics in political philosophy, or exposés on things, not so much in my other essays, but or even doing content like this, people don't understand, like it is a long track from hearing about something to verifying that there's some depth or truth to what's being said, because it's
Right.
so easy to have this knee-jerk reaction. Oh, I heard this, really, especially when you're critical of law enforcement like I am. It's so easy to have the knee-jerk reaction to just immediately assume it's true. You actually have to do a lot of work and dig into stuff before you can start to run with it. And that's what I like to hear you. And by the way, open records, thank you for saying open records. I'm so tired of everybody referring to data requests in their cities and their counties as FOIA. I'm like,
yeah.
you're not doing a FOIA. FOIA is federal and federal only, folks. It's if you call, I've seen more people get rejected for data requests or open records requests because they call their local agencies and go, I need to do a FOIA, and they're sorry, we don't do FOIA here. And they go, oh, okay. Because they're not asking
Right.
they're not asking for the right thing, and people, I hate it, but government agencies will literally use that as an excuse. They won't go, oh, do you mean a data request or an open records request?
Yep.
Well,
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I knew the difference. So, I mean, for those who don't know, maybe this can help them.
No,
well.
that's why I used you, because it was great to hear somebody else say open records or a data request or sunshine request or something, like whatever it is, because a lot of people go, help me do a FOIA. I'm like, what federal agency? No, my city council. And I'm like, that's not a FOIA. And then I get, don't be condescending. And I'm like, so
Yeah.
you finally hear enough scuttlebutt about this in her name. We're just going to throw it out there, folks, because she's a political candidate, and this is in
Yes.
the interest of exposing her. Okay, maybe the wrong word to use under the circumstances. Um, of commenting, we're commenting on publicly available information about a content that is incredibly important and speaks to her character and whether or not she's qualified to be sheriff. And by the way, folks, in Wisconsin, you don't have to be a certified peace officer to be the sheriff in Wisconsin. You could just walk in and say, I'm running for sheriff. So keep that in mind if Carrie Madrigal wins and you live in Racine County and you don't like her the next time there's a race for sheriff. Please throw your hat in the ring, because you're way more qualified than this lady. So Carrie Madrigal is her name. You had never heard of her. You heard enough scuttlebutt about the things she was doing, and you file an open records request, and they say, you know what, Adrianne, we would love to help you. We'll hand it to you right now.
Yes. I mean, as you can imagine. So
You got into a little bit of a fight.
Well, they put me off for a while, and there's something about 30-day. I think they're supposed to respond within 30 days. And so it got to be the 30 days. I hadn't heard anything. So I reached out again. I said, hey, I submitted this open records request. I'm still waiting for, any kind of responsive records. And shortly after that, they emailed me. They let me know that they had gotten my request and that they would be sending out an informative letter to Captain Carrie Madrigal, letting her know that her disciplinary records had been requested. And that if she had no issues with that, they would then be released to me as the requester. And I believe that was in early February. So remember, I filed my open records request December 1st of 2025. This was in early February. And she immedately, upon getting notice that her disciplinary file was requested, she filed, she hired an attorney, and she filed a lawsuit against her current boss, Sheriff Christopher Schmeling, and Racine County to keep her disciplinary files from being released.
And just to be clear, by the way, I want people to understand too. Like, I actually believe in the right of people in public employ to not have their discipline records immediately released upon request. Because if you were upset with an employee at a grocery store or at a department store and you filed a complaint and then you asked Target, hey, I want to know every single discipline issue that employee's had since they've started, Target's going to look at you and go, get bent. What right do you have to that? And so you could say, well, they're public employees, so there is no secret. No, there is, as individuals, they do have, I believe, they have a right to not have all their dirty laundry aired. As long as it is not impacting their ethics, the legality of their the requirement of their role as law enforcement, and as long as it is not breaking the law. That's what's really important here. That's what I want people to understand. What Adrianne did was she requested the discipline records, the discipline history of Carrie Madrigal, because she got wind of some very criminal behavior, not just corrupt or unethical, like corrupt criminal behavior she was involved in. And we'll let Adrianne tell you guys what Carrie Madrigal did. So she files a lawsuit to keep the records hidden. And how long did that fight go on?
I think it was June before there was a court hearing. Don't quote me on that. I believe it was early June. I don't have the date in front of me. And the judge in Racine County ordered that her disciplinary records be released, as the fact that she was running for an elected position. That's information that the public should have. And so he ordered that they be made public, and he gave her 20 days to appeal the order. And she turned around, and what I would call, a campaign publicity stunt. She says,
100%.
well, I'm going to go ahead and release my disciplinary files myself. And I'm going to post a link to my disciplinary files on my website so anybody can see them and read them. So before, the court ordered amount of time had elapsed, she released them herself. She did
which looks like a step towards transparency. It really does.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
But what she was doing, she was heading you off at the pass.
Right.
And she played some shenanigans too, because if I remember correctly, a lot of people reported the link to the records as a dead link. People were having trouble getting to it.
She took it down probably within 2 weeks of putting it up.
Yeah.
She took the link down. So it's no longer there.
But you have them. You have the records. not just the e-file. She's got.
I don't trust e-files.
she's old. She's old school like me. I'm older, but she's old school like me. She's like, nope. I got to have the paper in my hand.
It's also much easier to read for me when I have like the paper copies, and then you can compare, pages and notes. So
yeah, I'm so old. I prefer all of my reading be done off of papyrus and papyrus rolls.
I'm not quite that old.
So what ends up happening is you get your hands on this, and it's worse than you thought.
Yeah.
And it all stems around her work to cover up crimes and like pure deviant behavior on the part of a particular deputy whose last name it's Kite, correct? It's Preston Kite.
Yep, Preston Kite.
Yeah,
yep.
Preston Kite, who only ended up getting caught because of folks. This is disgusting.
Yes.
But he only ended up getting caught because he got a little bit too, excuse the terminology, cocky, and exposed himself in the bathroom. If I remember the history correctly, he exposed himself to someone that he tracked on a dating app when they were in the bathroom at a Burger King together. And Deputy Kite happened to be on duty in uniform. Full uniform.
Yep.
And he walked out of the toilet stall with exposed. And thought he was going to be okay because the person was on the same app as him. And that was the purpose of this app, is for people to be able to track each other and have hookup sex. And it backfired on him. And the person rejected him, and then immediately, not immediately, followed him, saw that not only was he in uniform, but he was also got into his squad car and drove away. And he said, well, that's disgusting. And then he did report him, and this started the spiral for Deputy Kite that ended up, and we have to be very careful with some of this language, ended up finding out that he had CSAM materials and lots of other allegations, and then that opened up to internal stuff. Correct, Adrianne?
I believe
You
so.
Yeah, you just so people, it's Adrianne, correct? Everybody,
Yes.
so it's
Yes.
so people don't
Although
go.
I grew up with everybody doing the Rocky line, and I
Yeah,
don't think I've ever even seen any of the Rocky movies. So
I only know the line. I've never actually.
same.
But yeah, so I just want everybody to go. Why does he keep calling her Adrianne? And I'm like, because that's her
Yes.
name. So, but
Yep. Thank you.
hello to everybody in the chat. Jugs, I see you. AVA still here. I hope you guys are listening to this. So there were then also accusations coming out that he had been sending explicit pictures to fellow deputies.
Yes.
But it gets better because he also had contact with children as part of his job.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, Preston Kite, former deputy of Racine County Sheriff's Department, was well versed in English Sign Language, ESL, I believe they call it. And
American Sign Language, right?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
ASL.
Yes. And so he was an advocate in the community for deaf children and deaf families, and being connected with them. And I also believe that he was renting a duplex that was not far from an elementary or middle school. I think it was an elementary school. But in the investigation that launched because of his inappropriate behavior at that gas station bathroom, there was a large investigation launched, which I believe ended up netting at least four individuals who were involved in a large child sex trafficking operation and CSAM,
Yeah.
as you said. And so that was part of what the gossip and rumors that I had heard was about, and Captain Madrigal's connections to Preston Kite specifically.
Now, nobody's alleging that Carrie Madrigal was personally involved with any of this in the sense of actively participating in or taking part in. The criminal behavior, which ended up only being dealt with internally as discipline, was that your records that you got ultimately ended up showing that she had worked to hide and cover up reports of Deputy Preston Kite and his behavior. She had worked to suppress this information both internally and from the outside. And there are even allegations that she tried to intimidate people who were filing reports, even internally.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, what we know for a fact, according to her disciplinary records, is that she's the captain. She oversees the entire patrol unit, which means any patrol officers, any drug enforcement agents, I believe. So whatever falls under that purview of that section of the sheriff's department, she oversees them. And so any, serious complaints would go to her as the captain. And there had been multiple complaints by multiple deputies as to inappropriate pictures that Preston Kite had been sending them. One deputy went so far as to changing his phone number because he was receiving unsolicited, inappropriate photos of body parts.
From Deputy
And
Kite.
yes, of Deputy Kite.
Yeah.
Yep. And so
and she was working to cover this up.
she didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, as the captain, it is her responsibility to deal with complaints. So it is absolutely sexual harassment in the workplace. And she knew about it. I mean, she has acknowledged that she knew about it. And she didn't address it.
What specifically did the discipline file end up saying about her role in this? Was it that, I mean, it's basically a dereliction of duty issue.
Yeah. So she signed an acknowledgement of the charges that were being filed against her. It says charges, so these are not my words. These are the words in the disciplinary file, that she accepted the charges that were being filed against her. And the investigation into her action and inaction involving Preston Kite was that she had committed serious misconduct in office.
Wow. And people like, these are the things that are going on in pretty much every single one of the law enforcement agencies that you have operating in your area. And I know that sounds like a stretch, but this is happening on a regular basis. And, you know, and as I mentioned in my opening, you know, we're seeing this with Flock, that there's serious misconduct. We're seeing some criminal charges come out of it.
Yep.
But the very minimum that could have happened or should have happened to Carrie Madrigal, even if she isn't going to be charged, like criminally charged for this, is that this kind of misconduct, this malfeasance in office, should have resulted in her being placed on the Brady list. And if people aren't aware of what the Brady list is basically a database of cops that you cannot trust because they have literally violated. They've either lied in reports, they've lied as a result, they've lied on the stand and been caught, which, by the way, if you lie on the stand, that's a criminal charge, folks. If you lie under oath, that's a criminal charge. Cops can lie under oath, and they just get put on a Brady list and keep their job. And it's not an exaggeration to say that the Brady list effectively ends a officer, a deputy, whatever, effectively ends their ability to function as a law enforcement officer, because nobody on the Brady list will ever get called to the stand to testify in a trial. No prosecutor in their right mind will ever do that. And Carrie Madrigal, just from her misconduct and ignoring the sexual harassment aspect alone, should have been Brady listed for this. Even though it wasn't a report in the sense of she was writing a report, she was actively ignoring complaints that would have gotten somebody else, more than likely, charged criminally.
Yeah.
If you go around sending unsolicited sexually explicit pictures to not just coworkers but anybody, they could have you charged criminally for that.
Yep.
And you have a deputy doing it, and she did nothing.
Yep. Even though she was made aware of it, there were complaints made.
How long were the, you know, are we seeing that the allegations had been going on for some time? Because it sounds to me from the reports and what you and I've talked about behind scenes.
Yep.
Like, this wasn't just something that started like on a Tuesday and went for 2 weeks. This is a long system, or a long, it was systematically abusive behavior on the part of Preston Kite.
Yep. So, if I'm not mistaken, Preston Kite joined the sheriff's office in 2020. Before that, I'm not entirely sure, where he was, but he became a deputy in 2020. And I believe it was in 2023 that complaints started being made about him. Formal complaints, if I'm not mistaken, started being made about him. He was arrested in 2024. And it wasn't until Carrie Madrigal's disciplinary file came out that we could see what, some of her involvement was.
Another thing that people don't understand is that his behavior is finally getting busted at, because of his actions at the Burger King. He unwrapped his Whopper. Sorry, I had to make a Burger King joke. He's escalating here, folks. This is it. He's escalating because he's not being dealt with. And this is predatory behavior. The more a predator gets away with their predatory behavior, the more emboldened they become. And not only more emboldened, but it's more aggressive. But because they also need a higher and higher amount of adrenaline to get off. We see the same behavior in serial killers. The one thing that, sorry, Jugs told me I had to have it my way. So. My audience is nothing if not quick on the one-liners. They accelerate, and what ends up bringing serial killers down most of the time is they accelerate into their behavior, and they do it more and more and more often, and they become sloppier. And this is the story with Preston Kite. This behavior is going on and going on and going on. He's literally harassing fellow deputies. They're complaining. Nobody's doing anything. We're not talking. This is male deputies.
Yes.
These are male deputies. We know for a fact that if it had been a female deputy, there had been a different story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine?
And so there's a little bit of they're not female. Sorry. It's a little bit of they're not female. It's also a little bit of Preston being homosexual. And also having a very, I'm sorry, folks, he has a very prolific presence in the LGBTQ activism community.
Yes, he did.
In the area, which made him incredible. And this is not a defense of Carrie Madrigal at all. This is not a defense. Because having good friends, one of them is a very conservative, very anti-radicalism, homosexual friend who cannot stand the activism that's out there. And he tells you they get away with it because people are terrified that if they deal with it, or if they say anything about it, they themselves are going to end up being the victims of retribution.
Right.
But they're, again, not a defense of Carrie Madrigal. Not a defense. It's saying you have a duty, Carrie Madrigal, even if there are repercussions, if there is retribution, if that community decides to come after you and say that you're targeting Preston Kite because of his activism. And we have pictures out there, folks. I'm not going to show them, but we've got pictures of him in radically deviant costume at LGBT, like mocking the Catholic Church and other things. Of him involved in these kind of groups.
And we know that the Catholic Church is also capable of covering up.
Yes.
The same kind of
Absolutely.
issues that, and
a lot of churches are. Let's just be honest.
Absolutely.
There are many shows, podcasts about all the different types of churches that are institutions love to cover up their own crimes. But Carrie Madrigal had a duty in the face of severe activist backlash, she still had a duty to protect her staff from a fellow staff member. And the fact that she failed to do that gave fuel to Preston Kite's behavior to the point where he accelerated and got caught. And folks, this isn't the first time we've talked about this particular kind of behavior on this show. Because if you go back, and I don't know if Adrianne's seen the content, but I worked with the guy. Deputy Matt Adamson was busted by a former detainee trying to meet with underage girls for inappropriate contact in exchange for alcohol in a predator sting. Chase Johnston, who's now in prison for doing predator stings, busted a deputy, reached out to me immediately and said, TC, is this who I think it is? We identified him. We knew who he was. I immediately told him to turn all that information over, not to the sheriff's office, but to the police department. And the police department in Rochester, Minnesota, did a courtesy call to Sheriff Kevin Torgerson and told him, hey, Deputy Matt Adamson was busted trying to meet an underage girl for inappropriate contact in exchange for alcohol. And Sheriff Kevin Torgerson did nothing about it. Nothing about it. And almost 2 years later, he got busted again, but this time by the BCA and NRPD. Not on purpose. It was an accidental catch. But had they done something about it nearly 2 years before when Chase turned him in, it could have saved hundreds of victims, folks. Hundreds of victims. And so, Carrie Madrigal, if you're watching this, and I hope to God you are, you should not be able to sleep 1 ounce, 1 wink of sleep, because how many young victims, how many other victims in your community alone, Carrie Madrigal, were victimized because you didn't do anything about Preston Kite? And if your answer is, well, he's in prison now for a very long time, who cares? You could have stopped it. And not just children. Where was your concern and your compassion for your deputies who were telling you this was happening? You, lady, not you, Adrianne. Carrie Madrigal, you are... Listen, lady. No. Carrie Madrigal, you are as much a predator as Preston Kite is. You are disqualified for being sheriff. You are disqualified. I hope that the AI clips this. Clip this, AI. Carrie Madrigal, you should not only should you not be running for sheriff, you shouldn't even have your license to practice in the law enforcement career field anymore. And you should be on the Brady list. You should be on the Brady list, lady. You don't deserve to be in law enforcement. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't think most people in law enforcement deserve to be there anymore. But lady, you've proven yourself to be a predator because you protected a predator. I've read some of the anonymous complaints from people who have reached out to other places and said, hey, she tried to intimidate me into not saying anything. And these people are terrified to come forward because of the retribution. I don't know how she sleeps, Adrianne. I don't understand how she can sleep at night. And then she wants to run as a conservative Republican. What the actual bananas Foster?
Yep.
I'm trying not to swear when I have proper people on my show. She's like, let it go. I have TC rants once in a while, but I don't know how you've gotten through this, and you've said like the last, full disclosure, poor Adrianne, through all of the stress of all of this stuff that's been going on, has had to battle some migraines, at least, especially just this week. And you flat out told me it was because of the stress of some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly weighty for me to be a survivor myself. I mean, I'm not talking about my story because, I want people to feel bad for me or see me as a victim. I want people to know that there are other survivors out there that are advocating for people who are victims or who could be victims. This should not be happening. We should not be having children who are sexually abused by anyone, let alone by people who are in law enforcement. And then to know that there was a captain who covered up behavior that she was aware of that gave him more time to have access to children. We don't have any idea the number of children that were in some way abused over the period of time where she did nothing. But we do know of one 9-year-old boy who was abused during that period of time.
By him.
And one is too many.
Right.
One is too many.
And that's so key, what you just said. During the time that his behavior was escalating, that it was accelerating within the sheriff's office itself, and then with people in the public.
Yep.
There was at least one victim who is now a survivor.
Yep.
And I love the fact that you refer to yourself and others as survivors, because I love that you're taking yourself out of that victim role and into a fighter's role. Survivors are fighters.
Yep.
And,
I mean, I'd like to see myself that way.
No, it's true. You are, and you're not comfortable talking about it, because I don't think there's ever a place where you're comfortable talking about it, but you're not afraid to talk about it, and there's a difference. It's never comfortable to tell people, "Hey, this is what was done to me. Gosh, let's go have a beer and giggle about it." I mean, that's, but you can sit down and have those serious conversations.
I'm more afraid of the children who could be impacted if I don't say something.
And the ones who were victimized, who are still living in that victims, who their families know about it, but they're living in that victimized mentality. And I want to say the same thing about Carrie Madrigal that I've said now about my former employer, Sheriff Torgerson. Goes to all these parades, because that's what these sheriffs do, right? Especially when they're running for office, they go to the parades, and then afterwards they go to the parades and the county fairs, and they're rubbing elbows with and talking to kids. And I'm like, I don't know how Kevin Torgerson in Olmsted County can go all the parades and all the towns and shake hands with all the kids and all the little girls. How could Carrie Madrigal, how can you go around Racine County, Wisconsin, which we're not talking about a podunk county, by the way, folks. Racine's got some pretty decent metro-size areas. How can you go, Carrie Madrigal, how can you go out to campaign events? Because she campaigns. She goes to fairs, and she goes to street festivals, and she goes to parades, and she does things. Carrie Madrigal, how in the world can you go walk down a parade route and not think to yourself which one of those little boys could have been, or maybe was victimized by a deputy that I was 100% responsible for supervising, and I was letting him get away with deviant sexual behavior with if he's bold enough to do it against fellow deputies, and you silence them and you ignore them, what can he do with the power that he has, with that badge on his chest and that gun on his hip, to victimize powerless children? Carrie Madrigal, how do you not see your victims in the faces of every one of those children and every one of those public events that you go to?
Absolutely. And I mean, to touch on, where Preston Kite is now and what, was found, he's spending 65 years in prison. And I read both of the criminal complaints against him.
They were disgusting.
And, I don't know that I've ever read anything that disturbing.
There were victims in some of the material that were so young wood chipper is not sufficient for what should have been done to Preston Kite. 65 years is not sufficient. And Carrie Madrigal aided that.
Yep, she allowed him more time.
More time.
Yep, and my understanding, according to the criminal complaint, is that he was set to possibly become the LGBTQIA liaison for the department. He was already, and thank you for correcting me earlier, the ASL liaison for the department. There was actually an article that came out about, and at the time, I think it was, look at how he's connecting with the community. But there was a deaf child sign in the town that he lived in Racine County. And he made himself known. He went to the family's home and knocked on the door and spoke with one of the parents and said, "Hey, I understand that you have, a deaf child, and I'm proficient in ASL. And if you ever need any kind of help, if you need him to be picked up from school, or you need somebody to help watch him, I would be happy to, lend myself to that." And then it comes out 6 months or a year later that these are the very victims that he's abusing and sharing photos of. I don't know if it gets much more disturbing than that.
I don't know if it gets more disturbing, but it certainly gets. How do I want to say this? He kind of brought down a few people in the area. Some people in other positions of power.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
So the other individual that I am aware of by name is Adam Westbrook, and I believe he was from the Sheboygan area. I think it was the Sheboygan area. Don't quote me on that, but he had been in positions of authority. I can't recall. Maybe you can. What his position was when he was caught. But he was also part of the ring with Preston Kite. And I believe that they were college buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were sharing photos of one of Westbrook's adopted children, if I'm not mistaken. I think that
these circles don't exist in a vacuum is really what happens, and they get away with it for so long that they like I said, they just get emboldened. I mean, how a Preston Kite who gets called on the carpet for sending, I'm sorry folks, he sends dick pics and whatnot to fellow male deputies who complain. One of them is harassed by this so much, changes his cell phone number.
Yep.
Complains, nothing's done. The behavior keeps going. The need for the thrill of the being on the edge. He engages in an app that's not illegal. Hookup culture is not illegal. There may be an immorality issue there. It's consenting adults can do what consenting adults want to do, and I don't believe it's anybody's business to be governing what they do on their own time and the privacy of their own lives. But when you engage in behavior in uniform as a representative of the agency, that's abuse. And that abuse, again, was aided by Carrie Madrigal. She directly contributed to Preston Kite, Deputy Preston Kite of the Racine County Sheriff's Office. She directly contributed to the event that took place in the Burger King bathroom that night, that day, or that time, because she didn't deal with it when she was made aware of it within the confines of the office. So he's, in his mind, subconsciously, maybe even consciously, thinking to himself, nobody's going to do anything to me. I'm protected. She's got my back.
Yep.
She's not going to, nobody's going to do it. And nobody's going to believe that. Nobody's going to believe that.
Yep.
Because nobody had held him accountable before. And this went on and on and on. And I guarantee you, the fact that we know of one 9-year-old victim, I guarantee you the fact that we know that this deputy has one no 9-year-old victim, for every one that you know, there are 10 to 12 or 13 or more that you never know about.
Yep.
Especially when they're aware that the person that's victimizing them is in uniform.
Right.
Who do you report that to?
Yep. That's a good question. Or if you report it to your supervisor and they do nothing about it. I mean, I honestly can't understand how she still has a job.
Let alone having the balls to
run for sheriff. And then
Yeah,
to think that like this information is not going to come out.
Well, I think, Adrianne, I think she was hoping that you were just going to be, I'm sorry, she was kind of hoping you'd just be a fart in the wind and blow away, right?
Probably.
And by releasing the information herself, but then, giving it as, putting it up as a dead link now, she still looks magnanimous. Like, look at, I'll be completely forthright. See, I'm so trustworthy. And we know people, they're not looking at her because of that link that she put up to her own records and saying, oh, she's disqualified. All they're going to read is a public statement from her saying, I am releasing my private disciplinary history so that you guys know what actually happened. Nobody's going to follow it.
Yep.
And they're going to see the R behind her name and know that she's in law enforcement, and they're going to support her. They're going to support her because, I'm sorry, Republicans, you see that they're in law enforcement and they got an R behind their name, and you're not going to do any digging. You're just going to say, oh, she must be all right.
She's a good person.
Yeah.
But that's what I've heard.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Carrie Madrigal is not a good person because she allowed victims to be made.
Yep.
Countless victims that we're probably never going to know about. And people can say, well, you're just speculating here. You're just speculating that this deputy has more than the one. You could call it speculation, but there's no way he doesn't have more.
I mean, you can read the criminal complaints and you can see the number of times, that he was soliciting photos of very young children. In fact, the younger and the more egregious the assault, the better he felt that it was.
If people want to read the complaint that you had in your hand, you want to show everybody again. If people want to read that complaint, is it available through your Substack? Is there a way for you to put that up on your Substack?
Yep, I'll make it available on my Substack. So I think it's kind of important to note Cary is one of 3 current candidates running for sheriff. And so
in the primary on Tuesday.
Well, in the primary there's 2.
There's 2.
So
one other Republican.
Yep.
And then the Democrats have one candidate, and so there's no primary there.
They have somebody running to assure that she has a
Competition.
challenger in November. Yep. So I have also Open Records requested Donald Vandervest's disciplinary file. He's the one who is running as a Democrat. And I feel like I'm pretty well versed on Open Records request, but the other candidate, Henry Perez, he served with the Miami-Dade Police Department in Florida. And that's a little bit beyond my purview on how to go about getting those records. It's just been a little bit much for me. Donald Vandervest has two verbal, what would you call them? Like two incidences where he was like verbally told, okay,
verbal coachings.
Yes, thank you. And I'm unaware of what exactly is in Henry Perez's disciplinary file. I hope to be able to look at that and read that. But what we have in Carrie Madrigal's file goes back to 2006, I believe. And there are 3 or 4 incidences where she has been disciplined for having extremely poor judgment, serious misconduct in office.
So she's got misconduct in office issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first
that
incident
predates Preston Kite.
Yes. So
tell us more, because now I'm just like, this is juicy. I'm like,
it kind of piles up. So I believe in 2006 she was working in the jail, and there was an individual who was brought in as part of like a drug bust. She'd been found with a large amount of drugs in her car, I believe, if I'm getting all of the details correct. And she was not to have access to a telephone because they were going to, there were multiple agencies involved. They were going to bust the residence where she
they were trying to do
living,
an information blackout. Yeah.
Okay.
They were just trying to keep her off the phone for a while so she couldn't call all of her connections to say, get out of the house.
Right. Exactly.
I don't even please, she let her have a phone, didn't she?
Yes, she did. And when those multiple agencies showed up, the house was empty. And I believe it was something like 2 kilos of drugs that this individual was found with. And then, so that was like, I think, extremely poor judgment on her part. She got like a 1-day suspension, unpaid suspension, I believe. And again, I will post the link to her disciplinary file so that everybody can see the details for themselves, because I think that's important. And then later on, there was an incident where she was the detective, I believe, on a crime scene, and she stole from the crime scene. Now, I've heard, cannot confirm, but so I've heard that it was a homicide. Can't confirm that. That's not detailed in the disciplinary file. But she stole something from a crime scene.
It doesn't matter what the crime scene was.
Nope.
She
No.
stole. She stole.
Yep.
What'd she steal?
She took a box of chocolates. Now, do we know where the box of chocolates came from? Do we know what they could have been laced with? Do we know who else, had access to them? And then she apparently took them.
Somebody's hearing this right now.
Yep.
Some bootlicking apologist, some Madrigal hanger-on,
Yep.
is hearing this and going, "Oh, come on."
Right.
She stole a box of chocolates. Wah, wah, wah. What are you complaining about? She stole someone else's property.
Yes.
And if your response to a cop stealing someone's property is, well, they were dead anyway, that's even worse.
Or they were a criminal. I mean,
Like,
but if they were a criminal, then again, that lends itself to what else could have been in those chocolates, right? I mean, that's
I don't care what I don't. If Carrie Madrigal wants to steal a box of chocolates that's laced with arsenic or fentanyl and takes it home and she kills herself with it, excuse me, she self-deletes after she steals, I don't care. Bravo, good on you.
But she didn't just eat it herself.
The fact that she stole from a victim, regardless, at that point, even if they were at one point a criminal in their life, at this point, that's not the issue. They're not the criminal right now. They are the victim. And you have the people protect and serve. Carrie Madrigal's piggy little face sees a box of chocolates and she says, I got to have me some of that. And so she takes it, which is theft. It's theft, folks. It's not her property. She uses her badge and her position of authority to take the property and steal it and consume it, and she shares it with other people.
Yep. At the office.
Please tell me somebody at the office is who reported her for this, and that it wasn't discovered some other way. Please tell me it was somebody at the office.
That's a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head. Yeah.
You know, folks.
And then I believe.
Go ahead, Adrianne.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and I believe she was given a 1-day suspension, unpaid suspension, for that. Which, like, those two things in and of themselves, I feel like are concerning.
Brady list. Brady list.
Yes. Yes.
Mitch needed to be on the. I did it. I'm sorry. Needed to be on the Brady list well before Preston Kite. Well before.
Yes.
So all of this argument that I've been making that Preston Kite's behavior was accelerating and was increasing and getting more risque and more emboldened because Carrie Madrigal was protecting him. Well, guess what? Carrie Madrigal's behavior got worse and worse and worse because she was getting these tiny little slaps on the hand for things that should have had her terminated. Right. Folks, you can go back to letting a criminal get on the phone and say, okay, it's misconduct. So it wasn't an accident. It wasn't she didn't know. She knew full well what she was doing, and she still let this accused criminal, get on the phone, which could have blown open we can have a conversation, and I would gladly have that with somebody about the war on drugs in the United States and whether or not we should be doing it. But she is a law enforcement officer. She's involved with the sheriff's office. She knows full well that this person was not to be on the phone, and she still handed them the phone anyway and let them make the call. That proves it was misconduct. And then later on, she's a detective investigating a crime scene, and she steals from the victim.
Yep.
That itself was a crime. A crime. And she got 1 day without pay.
Yep.
1 day. 1 day. Yep. And everybody wants to go, well, but the sheriff, that guy, he's a good guy. And I know this is the views and the opinions of the host of the show do not necessarily reflect the views and the opinions of the guest, and vice versa. But, folks, this is why I tell you, an agency that has corrupt officers only has corrupt officers because the top is corrupt too. No matter how much you might like them, this level of corruption only exists because the corruption is all the way through. And Adrianne and I both grew up in a different age than some of you watching. But one of the things that our parents used to teach us was you don't hang out with bad kids because bad apples ruin the entire bag or bucket, right? Until you talk about law enforcement. until you talk about law enforcement. And then when you point out the bad apple, people go, it's just a few. It's just a few. It's just if the rest of them are good. No, I'm sorry. If you've got a bad apple, even one, hanging out with good apples, and the good apples aren't doing anything to get rid of the bad apple, then the good apples are also bad apples. Now, they may not be abusing your rights, may not be stealing from you, but they're not doing anything to get rid of the bad apple, which means they're bad apples. Carrie Madrigal is a bad apple, and she was allowed to be a bad apple by other bad apples. And some of you who watch this might actually drink beer with some of those bad apples and go, yeah, but they're good people. Because a lot of people are telling us Carrie Madrigal is a good person, and now we've got proof she's not. She's not a good person. She's not a good person at all. She should be in cuffs somewhere, is where she should be. But no, she still has a badge. She still has her position. And guess what? If she loses this election, she's still going to have a job. She doesn't have to give up her job to run for this office. She's still going to have her job. And guess what? The bad apple behavior is going to continue. And some of you are going to keep saying, well, she's a good person and nothing bad's ever happened to me because of her. And that's where I say back to blue until it happens to you. When do you need to be the victim of a bad cop before you finally start saying we need 100% transparency and we need it right now? Because there is a 9-year-old and a bunch of others out there that aren't just victims of Preston Kite. They're victims of Carrie Madrigal being a bad apple and her being allowed to be a bad apple. Yep. And it took Adrianne to raise a stink. Because if she hadn't done her job as a citizen, her duty as a citizen, if she hadn't done what she did, no one would know any of this. No one would know any of this.
It would be just gossip and rumors, and it could be dismissed as such. But so just a quick little note. After I got the disciplinary files, it says in the disciplinary files regarding Preston Kite that there was a formal complaint made against Carrie Madrigal by one of the law enforcement officers who was on the receiving end of some of these pictures. And so it was probably a month and a half or so ago that I submitted another open records request asking for any complaints that had been made against Carrie Madrigal or Carrie Madrigal by any other name. And I received a response back from the sheriff's department stating that they have no responsive records to my request. To which I responded in an email to them and I said, can you please go back and double check and just make sure that there are no responsive records, because I have her disciplinary file right here in front of me, which is saying that according to the investigator who investigated her and her interactions with and inaction with Preston Kite, that there is a formal complaint that was filed against her. And I believe actually it was just yesterday that I received a response from the sheriff's department saying, okay, we're going to look into this deeper and we'll get back to you.
These agencies and Adrianne, I wasn't picking on you by talking about the outgoing sheriff being a bad apple. Not
at all.
I know that you live and work in that environment in that area, and you have different interactions with people, and I want you to understand that I'm empathetic to that. I really am. So it's easier for me to be detached and say, I'm sorry, the outgoing guy is just as responsible for Cary getting away with this crap. I don't know how the outgoing sheriff can look at the situation, not about her running for office, but can look at the captain overseeing the patrol division and go, I'm going to give you some time off without pay, but you can keep your job. This should have been an immediate decertification. I don't know what Wisconsin calls theirs. In Minnesota, we call it POST, Police Officer Standards and Training. So whatever the Wisconsin version of POST is, not only should the sheriff have immediately terminated Madrigal for cause, and I know there would have been a union fight and yada, 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 but Wisconsin's POST should have looked at this and said, you protected a sexual predator who was preying on his fellow deputies.
Yep.
And the sheriff, as far as we know, did none of that. Gave her a slap on the wrist, and ultimately 10 days. What was it, 10 days?
Yeah, 10 days.
Yeah. 10 days suspension. Sounds like a lot of money coming out of your pocket, but there are ways that they can work around that. Do they take it all? Do you take it all out of one check? Do you, they can. I'll take my 10-day suspension by taking 1 day off every pay period without pay. Right. It doesn't hurt as much that way. So however they worked it out.
Right.
But 10-day suspension is not sufficient in this case. And they're used to being able to do this. They're used to being able to cover up for one another. And again, I'll say Cary made the decision to cover up for Preston because she had been allowed to get away with other things in the past and she thought she was protected. And guess what she learned? What did Carrie Madrigal learn? Voila, she's protected.
Yeah.
Protected enough that she can announce she's running for sheriff, file and run for sheriff, and tell people that she just wants to be the first female sheriff in Wisconsin.
She wants to be the first female sheriff elected in Racine County.
Racine County.
Yep.
After Linda Peterson told us earlier that Carrie Madrigal herself admitted she was a DEI hire to the Racine County Sheriff's Office. So, is she really a conservative Republican? Is that how conservative Republican women in Wisconsin talk? Do they say, "Yeah, I know I'm a DEI hire," and you basically brag about it, and then say they want to be the first female sheriff because somehow that's what you should be voting for her for? Like, if you're a woman in Racine County, you should be insulted that her appeal to you is vote for me so I can be the first female sheriff.
Yep.
Nothing screams I'm qualified to oversee an entire law enforcement agency more than I'm the first female sheriff. That's so insulting to the women that actually work to be good at what they do.
Right.
Like that literally in that agency actually makes in the Racine County Sheriff's Office, it makes every female deputy look like a DEI hire, is what it does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if people have a hard enough time trusting female cops, just watch all the videos where like even male deputies are like, oh God. But it's just she's so unqualified on so many levels, and some of them are just the admitting that she's a DEI hire and wanting to be the first female sheriff in Racine County. That's not even icing on the cake. That's just like, that's the dumbest thing in the world. That should be enough to disqualify you. But then you look into the criminal misconduct. Hey, Adrianne, no wonder you've had headaches. I'm getting one now, but it's because I'm sitting under my lights, I think. But
well, if I'm being
dehydrated.
completely honest too, I mean, think about it. I'm speaking out against a sheriff's candidate in Racine County, which is where I reside. So, and I have a family, and we have a home.
Have you looked to see if a flock camera has popped up in front of your house yet?
No flock cameras.
Okay. But
yes.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, TC. You have faced some backlash from Madrigal herself. She blocked you from her campaign page.
Yep.
I just want everybody to hear this. A person who's running for political office has blocked a constituent in her community and then has come onto your Facebook page and insulted you and accused you of multiple things and said terrible things about you over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Which, of course, you have screenshots of.
Absolutely. I screenshot everything.
Yeah. Because you got into a world of things that you learned very quickly you needed to make sure you had records of them all.
Right. Yep. And she's running on a platform of transparency. If you look at her Facebook page, if you can look at her Facebook page, if you have access to it, she is running on a platform of transparency. But then she sues to keep her disciplinary records from being transparent. She covers up for the worst kind of person in our society. It's appalling.
To put it into a proper light, if Preston Kite had merely been interacting with male deputies who had shown interest in interacting with him, once again, no problem.
Right.
If that's what you want to do, like, more power to you.
Outside of work, yep.
If he wanted to advocate for LGBTQAI plus issues, hey, go out and I'm an advocate for people. I advocate for advocates. I don't care what you're advocating for, as long as you're not advocating for criminal behavior. Yep. And if for you that's a moral behavior, I may disagree with you on the morality of it, but I'm also going to defend your right to advocate for your morality. Again, I think
we're on the same page with that.
So we're speaking the same language here, and I'm not addressing this to you. I'm just for the audience and for other people who might be paying attention to this.
I was just echoing your.
If you're a good deputy and you're gay, if you're a good deputy and you're female, hey, more power to you. More power to you. If you're a good deputy and you're Sikh, great. If you're a good deputy and you're a Muslim, good for you. If you're a good deputy and you're atheist, I don't care. I don't care. This is not what makes this important. What makes all of this important is the abuse, the corruption, the misconduct, and the criminal behavior going unchecked because the people are in positions of power and there's no one that can hold them accountable. And it took one brave soul from outside of the sheriff's office. One brave soul from outside of the sheriff's office, who, by the way, apparently happened to be on the app for the same reasons that Preston Kite was on the app, saying, that's not right. What that individual did was an act of bravery.
Yes. Yep.
And fortitude. And what it did is it exposed that the entire Racine County Sheriff's Office has a corruption problem, and it's not just one or two people.
Yep. And quite honestly, it pains me to say that, because in 2009, I had an incident where, like, my abuser reoffended and broke his probation. And the detective that was sent to interview me was at that time Detective Chris Scaling, who is now our sheriff. And I had the utmost respect for him and the way that he approached that situation, the way that he spoke to me, the way that he got the information that he needed. And I've followed his career since then, cheered him on becoming the sheriff. And it hurts because I don't think that he's the guy that I thought that he was, or becoming sheriff, changed him. But I've also had, run-ins with really great sheriff's deputies. I mean, as far as I know. And I don't have.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I don't have a problem with, I don't need to know everything about the deputies that are overseeing our county, or the police officers that are overseeing the city.
Their personal lives.
Right. But if you're running for public office, then your public service should be available to the public so that they can decide based on facts if they want to vote for you,
not just
to represent
popularity.
them. Now, why would I want to vote for somebody who protected the very type of person that destroyed my childhood? And I mean, I believe that I am in some ways better than I would have been, had that not happened, because I can speak for people that, are victims or survivors. But at the same time, I didn't have a childhood like children have when they're not victims of something like that.
Yeah.
And I certainly do not want her as the sheriff of our county then.
See, the difference is, as a survivor and now an advocate for people, even if that's not your official, role, but as a survivor and an advocate, you're out actually doing the work to expose people who should be responsible for exposing people. And ultimately, Preston Kite running around as an advocate for people who are deaf because he knows ASL, he's not an advocate. He was a predator on the hunt. And for people who, for lack of better terminology, almost don't have a voice in the world the way the rest of us can have. And you've experienced and come up, and it's now right in your face. You've had to experience what many more people are now starting to experience, is that you hit this brick wall of truth that the public persona of some of these people is far different than what's going on with them behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And you're, this now soon to be former sheriff, as he retires, has a side of him that's been exposed. And you can say, like, well, he can't possibly know what every one of his deputies is doing when they're on the clock by harassing, or off the clock and, harassing. That's his job as a sheriff. The sheriff's job has very little to do with interacting with the public. The sheriff's responsibility is to be intimately involved with his staff to a level where he knows every complaint, he knows every problem, he knows every discipline issue, he knows all of that.
Yep. And to be able to oversee that. Yep.
To be able to oversee it. It shouldn't have taken complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint for Carrie Madrigal to get a discipline, and ultimately he should have fired her. So, but the first complaint that Preston Kite was sending inappropriate, sexually explicit pictures to fellow deputies unsolicited, should have been enough for the sheriff to step in and say, "We're fixing this right now, Carrie Madrigal. Here's what you're going to do." That's what his job should be.
Yep.
That's what his job should have been. But instead, he gave her what amounted to nothing more than a slap on her wrist and made her comfortable enough to run for sheriff and know that she's protected. If she wins, who's going to get rid of her? And if she
Right.
loses and they come after her, there's nothing. They don't have anything to come after her on because she's been disciplined. They can't get rid of her now. And that was made possible by every sheriff who oversaw her discipline and didn't do anything more drastic than they did. She's untouchable now because the entire system is corrupt. And so when I throw out the hypothetical good deputy, regardless of their sexual identity and their gender identity and their religious identity and yada 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 yada, I'm telling you that not just the agency you're living in the county that they're responsible for protecting allegedly, but every county, every agency across the United States, for the most part, has this type of sick nepotistic corruption going on inside of it. So even if they're not out beating people up and unlawfully gunning people down, they're cesspools of corruption and immorality, and they're just getting away with it. And as long as most people never have to see it, then in their eyes, everything's okay. And that's how we end up with situations where a Preston Kite can victimize countless little children until one brave soul literally risks his own safety and well-being to turn him in.
Yep.
Because that could have very easily gone very bad for him.
Yes. Yep.
Carrie Madrigal can't do anything about the content here. She can't shut this down. She can't get rid of it, and she can't silence you here like she can on her campaign page. What would you say to Carrie Madrigal right now? And you can be as mean as you need to be. I know you don't have it in you, but go ahead.
I think that there are a lot of families and children who are hurting and trying to navigate how they're going to cope and move forward and be able to have any sort of a normal life because of Preston Kite's actions and her inaction in that situation is almost as bad as his actions. I don't understand how she still has a job. I don't understand how she thinks she can run for sheriff and people aren't going to speak about what she's done or not done. I don't understand how people can look at the situation and say, even though she's the captain and she's the one who was overseeing, the deputies, she's in charge of overseeing the deputies on patrol, that, she's not responsible for that, or she shouldn't take ownership of that. It's not transparency. She's not being transparent. And as I've said publicly, the children and the families of Racine County deserve better than somebody who is going to protect pedophiles and police officers.
Yeah. And sadly, like I said, in the opening, people they look at the individual, they see they wear a uniform and have a badge and they have an R behind their name, and they just support them. They just support them because we can't get people to, and present company excluded, and others who are watching and have been here throughout this, they can't be bothered to think past a political affiliation and a position that they've been it's been ingrained in them. Anybody that does this kind of work must be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there was ever a day where that was broadly true of the entire career field, but today I can speak from personal experience, and there's probably some level of confirmation bias on my end. It's the law enforcement career field just continues to be the gift that keeps on giving for someone who wants to put content out. It just, I think when you told me about this story, I think I had said something, might have said it to you or might even said it to myself and to a friend of mine. Just when I think it can't get worse, you get to this point, you're like, well, I can't get any worse. And then it's like, oh, worse says here, hold my beer, and and that's in Wisconsin, it's here, hold all my beers.
Yep.
But it's almost heartbreaking because you say to yourself, could you not have made it that bad? Could it have been, like, you don't ever want to see anybody victimized, but could it just be that you were like victimizing adult men that were getting drunk at the bar and you were, taking advantage of them while they were under? Could it have been that? Please, it's gross, but could it have been that? Nope, can't. Nope, gotta go way worse. Gotta go way worse. And we wouldn't maybe know about how bad it was. Preston Kite could still be a deputy today if it hadn't been for that incredibly emboldened decision he made at that Burger King that evening.
Yes, and I can't remember the officer's name offhand, but as well as the officer who responded and took Preston Kite's phone. I believe both of his phones he took and, looked at them and was shocked, as we all should be, by the content that he saw. So, in that case, this law enforcement officer did do what he was supposed to do. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a federal investigation that's going on involving Adam Westbrook, the other individual who was like caught up in this trafficking ring with Preston Kite. So it's deep. It's as dark as anything I've ever read or come into contact with. And it was enabled by somebody who thinks that she can be sheriff of our county.
Well, you guys are literally faced with a decision at this point. And I'm not casting aspersions on the others. I don't know him from Adam, but this is what happens when people have been trained to look into these, these choices in the polling place and go, well, you just got to vote for the lesser of two evils. Like, if people choose to not vote for Carrie Madrigal in the primary on Tuesday, which, by the way, yes, I'm advocating that people go and vote against Carrie Madrigal in the primary in Racine County on Tuesday. Please, if you live in Racine County, Wisconsin, show up and vote against Carrie Madrigal.
I would agree, please.
But you still, without being able to know anything about her opponent in the Republican primary for sheriff in Racine County, Wisconsin, you may literally just be in a position where you're continuing to vote for the lesser of two evils. I hate to say it, but her opponent may be just as bad as her. We just don't know it. And that's the terrifying thing about these situations as it regards law enforcement. You literally don't know. And somebody could say, oh, well, I know him, they're a good guy, but you got people out there saying that about Cary. Like, she's a good person. She does volunteer work in the community. Yeah, so did Preston Kite.
She's a priest in the Catholic Church.
She's a what?
She's some kind of priest in the Catholic Church.
It can't be Catholic. They don't have female priests.
It has to do with, like, the communion. I don't know what type of there's like a specific name.
Now I'm
for
all
it.
now Adrianne has me all sorts of theologically confused. Now I'm gonna have to go do more research that I don't want to do.
It's part of her bio. So, but I know that there are people within her church who are voting for her because of her position in the church as well.
No, see, now we're gonna look it up before we say goodbye. And when we say goodbye, I put you in the green room and tell you to wait there, and then I close the show and say terrible things about you while you can't defend yourself.
Hey, it wouldn't be anything new. I'm used to it.
In her bio, let's see here.
I believe it's on her campaign page.
And that's what we're looking at.
Or was on her campaign page.
Law enforcement professional, that remains in question. Community first leader, which community? Northwestern University School of Police Staff and oh my gosh, she trains other people to be cops. Oh my gosh. Serving Racine County with integrity and transparency. Integrity and a deep commitment.
And transparency.
Transparency.
What?
Yeah. What? Yeah, I'm not seeing. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about it. She got one review. Somebody said Cary just wants people to forget she protected. Cary just wants people to forget she protected the pedophile Preston Kite with the help of Sheriff Schmalling. Whatever job she thinks she did for our CSO clearly isn't getting done with all of the selfies and self-promoting and running from the truth. So at least the one review on the page is, yeah, we'll have to find out. Linda Peterson said maybe she's a deacon. So yeah, I don't, a deaconess, that might be the case, but, I'm gonna put you in. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'll look forward to. I know I have the receipts.
I appreciate you as much as I hate it. I appreciate you, reaching out to me with this story. Linda Peterson just said, I know a person who is staunchly pro-life, runs a pro-life Wisconsin booth, and said he will vote for her because she goes to his church.
Yep. I'm aware of that as well.
Okay. What does being sheriff have to do with being pro-life? That's not a law enforcement position. And I'm an abolitionist. I don't like abortion. I don't think it should exist. But I don't vote for somebody for sheriff because of their position on abortion. That is the most asinine, stupid, just single issue voter reason in the world to vote for someone.
And can you be pro-life and be anti-child sexual safety? I don't see how those go together.
Well, what I hate to say it, but most people who are pro-life, they only care about the preborn. They don't care about the afterborn.
I've seen that, unfortunately.
These are the same people. These are the people who talk about how much they hate abortion, but then when they see a woman with 5 children at the store and 2 of the kids are kind of cranky and yelling and screaming, they're like, "Oh man, people shouldn't have kids." I'm not even. These are those people. That's. Thank you for making me aware of this story and for being willing to do this just a few days before the primary. I'm going to put you in the green room, and like I said, I'm going to say terrible things about you, and then afterwards I'll touch base with you. You look like you're going to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope the word gets out, and also I love that you recognized Betty Jane and her son in the beginning, and my heart goes out to her. I cannot imagine losing a child. So
that way, yeah.
Prayers Prayers to her. Thank you again.
Betty is an amazing individual.
She really is. Talk about advocating for.
And she does so much
people.
for so many people.
Yeah.
Like literally, I can't tell people what she does for people, but just she does things for people. And she's got a heart of gold and the spirit of a lioness. She's just fierce.
Yeah. She's awesome.
All right,
Lots of respect to her.
You stand by.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Told you it wouldn't be too bad.
We'll see.
Folks, this content like this is important. It's not fun to do. I do try to have fun with it, but it's not. I don't enjoy it. I really don't. Law enforcement accountability is huge with me. Government accountability is huge with me, but this kind of content is not like I have video from just this week that I'm going to be working on of Rochester Police Department cruiser tooling down the road at 70 plus miles an hour in a 60. And I just follow them on my dash cam. I've got it. That's fun for me to do. Right? That kind of stuff is fun for me to do. I like to point out the hypocrisy and just have fun with it. Identify the squad car and whatnot. These kind of stories, these are not fun. These stink because of who the victims are. Anytime there's a victim, it's bad. But when it's minor children, it's the worst. So I'm working on finishing touches of my Blake Mosted music video, the song that I put together. I wrote lyrics and then had AI write the music. I'm against data centers and surveillance, but AI isn't evil. It's a tool. It's what you use it for is the problem. So if you hear me talk about data centers and surveillance, I'm not opposed to AI. I'm opposed to what people use that tool for. Okay. That's my position, but I'm working on that. And that, Blake Mosted story ties into stories like this. It's a lack of transparency and accountability in law enforcement and in other government agencies, because you also now have a county board in Racine County that really should be answering some tough questions, but they're not going to because nobody's asking questions right now. And after the primary on Tuesday, even if Cary loses, you folks in Racine County, you got a lot of work to do. And I'm going to tell you this. A lot of this is on the backs of the voters, people. You're not paying enough attention. You need to stop worrying about who's president. You need to stop worrying about who your congressman is. You need to stop worrying about who your senator is. And you need to start paying attention to in Wisconsin, who your assemblyman is and who's going up to your to your state house. But you need to be paying attention to who's on your damn school board, and you need to be paying attention to who's in your county commission, and you need to be paying attention to who your mayor is and who your city councilors are. That's where it matters, because if you can reform those bodies, then you can maybe start to reform the rest of them. But if you can't be bothered to pay attention to your local government, the people that have the most power of taxation over you, the people who live in your community and have the power to arrest you and snatch you up and end your freedom or take your life from you over petty things, then why do you care who the president is? Why? Why do you care who the president is if you don't even know who your sheriff really is at heart? Stop worrying about Republican versus Democrat. Stop worrying about who's in the White House, who's in the Senate, who's in the House. Start paying attention to your local political positions. Start paying attention to your city administrators and your county administrators. Make them answer the damn questions. Show up at the meetings. Take time off from work. If you could take time off from work to go boating, you could take time off from work to go to a meeting in the middle of the damn day or in the early evening. Think local, act local, and then some of this will change. But if you're outraged about Preston Kite and Carrie Madrigal, but you aren't outraged enough to show up to a meeting and say something publicly, then don't tell me about how outraged you are. Because you're just a little bit irritated. That's all it is. And you're lazy, and honestly, you're the reason we're losing the republic if you can't show up to these things. Or at least talk to these people when you see them in public. Ask them questions when you see them in public. They're your servants. If you hired somebody to mow your yard and their wife to clean your house, and you came in and the yard was full of dog crap and never mowed, and your house was full of trash, how long would you tolerate those people working for you? You'd give them one shot. Fix this crap or you're fired. Nope, not your sheriff, not your captain at the sheriff's office. They're my friend, so I can't say anything hard to them. Stop being cowards. Every single one of you in Racine County should show up at the next county board meeting after the primary, win or lose, and demand Carrie Madrigal be fired. Put the pressure on the politicians. Make them uncomfortable and let them know if they don't get rid of Carrie Madrigal by putting pressure on the sheriff's office, you're coming for them in the next election. Because the sheriff's office may not be part of the county board, but the county board's got control over the sheriff's office budget and hiring. And if all of a sudden the sheriff's office isn't getting the toys and the gimmicks that it wants anymore, and they're not getting the pay raises they need to hire staff, then they're going to snap into shape. So Racine County, if you're pissed off that Preston Kite was molesting little children, it's your fault for not getting involved sooner. So pull your heads out of your asses and get involved where it matters and stop worrying about Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever the next Democrat is going to be or whoever the next Republican is going to be. Am I pissed off at Trump for bombing Iran? Yeah, I am. I'm pissed off about it. Am I pissed off because he's screwing up the economy? Yes. And do I talk about it? You're damn right I do. But you know what else I talk about? Shit like this. So get involved locally or shut up about politics. Rant over. I needed that month off. Probably need another one now. Until next time, my friends, fight for your freedom, it is yours. Fight for your liberty, it belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-minus 30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at